This newborn infant was never seen by anybody at the hospital, and when the nurses found out the reason why the parents had abandoned the baby, they were shocked so much that they phoned the authorities. In the quiet halls of St. Vincent's Children's Hospital, where laughter and tears mingle in equal measure, Nurse Ashley Mercer has devoted her life to caring for the most vulnerable, the newborns fighting for their first breath. But one day, an abandoned infant arrives under mysterious circumstances, left alone in an incubator with no visitors, no records, and something unnatural lurking behind its innocent eyes. As Ashley grows suspicious of the eerie child, she uncovers a horrifying truth: this is no ordinary baby. It doesn't cry, it doesn't sleep, and when it smiles, its teeth are too sharp, its gaze too knowing. Soon, hospital staff begin vanishing, security footage glitches with impossible images, and a guttural voice whispers from the nursery at night, "She'll be my mother now." Now, Ashley must unravel the dark history behind this cursed child before it claims her too, because some horrors should never be born. Let us know where you're watching from and what time you found this video. A haven of laughter and sorrow, the Children's Hospital was a place where small warriors fought against the odds every day. Ashley Mercer had invested 10 years of her life at this institution. She poured her heart into every newborn she held and every fever she calmed. Despite the fact that she did not have any children of her own, on the other hand, she may not have been well prepared for this kid. An anonymous call to 911 reported that a baby had been abandoned in the park across from the hospital. The circumstances surrounding the infant's arrival were strange. A flimsy blanket that was soiled with blood was used to wrap the kid after it was discovered by the emergency medical services. The youngster was placed under a seat as the fall breeze rustled through the trees. Just a note: you have no identity, only a delicate existence, left up to the whims of destiny. Initially, Ashley was under the impression that it was just another unfortunate instance of parents who were either too young or too fearful to adopt their kid. Over the course of many days, however, she became aware of something unsettling. No one had arrived. There are no relatives who are crying, and there is no mother who is feeling guilty and stealing peeks through the window of the nursery. While the baby lay in the incubator, it was not being loved by anybody. The only thing that was keeping an eye on it was the machine and the faint hum of the hospital routine. Ashley was unable to contain her curiosity. On a particular evening, she approached the bassinet as her fingers briefly paused on the medical paperwork. Nothing to be named. It does not exist. There is just a case number. At delivery, the infant had a subtle blue tinge to its skin, which the physicians had ascribed to minor hypoxia. The baby was too little, and the doctors had determined that this was it. When Ashley moved closer, however, she saw something that caused her to hold her breath. Neither of the infant's eyes were closed, and they were completely incorrect. Instead of the hazy, unfocused stare of a baby, these eyes were acute and attentive. They were unsettlingly mature while they were so little. Due to the excessive size of the pupils, the irises were completely obliterated by pools of darkness. This caused Ashley to stagger backwards, her heartbeat pounding loudly in her ears, as the infant moved its head toward her with a purposeful and unnatural precision. That wasn't even the most terrible part. As she stared, the baby's lips opened and stretched into a grin. It was a smile that was all too broad, all too knowing, and it was filled with teeth that were so little that they looked like needles. The sound that emanated from its throat was a gurgling sound, and it eventually transformed into a sound that sounded like laughing. While Ashley was frantically searching for her phone, her hands began to shake. The authorities would certainly consider her to be mad. She was aware, however, that this was not a typical youngster. They first rejected her when the cops arrived on the scene. Then they saw the video from the security system. The recordings showed the infant sitting up straight in the incubator at 3 minutes and 17 seconds after 3 o'clock in the morning, with its tiny fists placed against the glass as it looked directly into the camera. A murmur, barely audible yet distinct, could be heard in the background. "She'll be my mother now." The reality was far more devastating than being abandoned. There was no evidence that the child's parents had abandoned them elsewhere. They had been consumed by it. After seeing the surveillance film for the third time, Ashley's hands began to shake. In the antiseptic hospital lights, the faces of the police officers, Detective Harris and Officer Ruiz, were pallid as they stood on the ground next to her. "She'll be my mother now." It was not the correct voice. Excessively deep and guttural for a child of that age. However, the movements of the baby's lips were perfectly in time with the words being said. A harsh exhalation was released by Detective Harris. "This must be some kind of joke," the speaker said. "Is there a problem with the system?" However, Ashley was ahead of her time. That was the teeth that she had seen. Mr. Ruiz, the officer, took a deep breath. "We have to look into the reports of people who have gone missing. There ought to be a record of this monster, if it truly did anything to its parents, if it did." A burner phone was discovered in the park, abandoned close to the bench where the infant had been left. The police were able to connect the original 911 call to the burner phone. The forensics team was able to extract a single fingerprint, which was too tiny to belong to an adult. While everything was going on, the workers at the hospital noticed weird happenings. "When I checked the incubator, the baby was just staring at me," said Elena, a nurse who worked the night shift. "I heard crying. There was a 10-second pause in the display of the monitors, after which they resumed their normal behavior, as if nothing had occurred." According to Dr. Patel, the results of the blood work were abnormal. The white cell count was elevated, but the DNA test revealed that it did not match any human genome that has ever been documented. Ashley made an effort to avoid the nursery, but she was unable to completely ignore the nightmares. The infant would crawl toward her on all fours, its joints twisting in the wrong direction, and it would mutter in that terrible voice, "I'm coming up behind you. I was held by you. For that reason, you are mine." As the truth reveals itself. Investigator Harris probed further into the matter. Before the infant was discovered, the Hargroves, a couple who had been reported missing, had disappeared from their residence 2 days earlier. Their home was devoid of any indications of hardship, with the exception of one particular element. There was no dirt or grime in the nursery. Far too immaculate. The walls seemed as if they had been licked clean by something. After that, the forensic team eventually located the bones. Fragments that were little and gnawed on were concealed behind the walls. Adult human being. And in the cot, there was a solitary little tooth. Confrontation at the end of the day. When they returned to the hospital, the infant started to undergo changes. The darkening of its skin began to extend across its very lengthy limbs. Despite the fact that the nurses secured the unit, it was of little consequence, mostly due to the fact that after Ashley arrived for her shift, the incubator was completely empty. When she turned around, she saw something creeping toward her from the darkness of the corridor. No longer a child in any way. It is not human, and it was full of hunger. As she retreated from the mysterious object in the corridor, Ashley's breath came out in short, terrified gasps. Its limbs were extended out for an excessive amount of time, and its fingers were curling up against the tile floor like spider legs. Sometimes it was a kid, and other times it was something altogether other. The lights in the hospital fluctuated, producing jagged shadows that caused its shape to twist and squirm. "Mother," it sputtered, its voice making a clicking sound that was moist throughout. Ashley whirled around and sprinted away immediately after the hospital went into lockdown. Alarms began to sound, crawling around ceilings and slithering into ventilation shafts were some of the strange movements that the monster was seen doing on security cameras. The voice of Dr. Patel could be heard crackling over the public address system. All staff evacuate immediately. We are not practicing for this. Now, however, it was too late. The electricity suddenly went off. Ashley was able to hear it despite the oppressive levels of darkness. It is skittering, taking a breath. This is hilarious. Barricaded in the security office, Detective Harris rummaged through old case files while he was there. His hands shook when he discovered the document, which was a report from 30 years ago. There is yet another abandoned child, and yet another slaughter. One word, terminated, was written on the file like a stamp. However, the procedure was rendered ineffective. The one and only hint, one that is written by hand, the first thing it feeds on is fear. After that, meet. Unsteady beams of light emanated from the phones of Ashley and a few other nurses as they hid in the maternity section. When it happened, the screaming began. There was a gurgling and ripping sound that reverberated throughout the corridors as voices were silenced one by one. When Officer Ruiz turned on his radio, it hissed to life. The words, "It's not a baby," were murmured by Harris. It may be a spoof. It takes the shape of whatever it is that will make you care about others. When it happens, it absorbs you. Unchanging. At that point, Ashley, it's coming for you next. There was a wobble in the door handle. Something made a scratching sound on the wood. A voice that is both lovely and plaintive, that of a child. "Mommy, kindly let me in." There was a burning sensation in Ashley's eyes as she held a scalpel. She had a single opportunity: struggle or perish.